Welcome to Horn Camp Connect, an offering of Cormont music. I'm your moderator and KBHC staff member, Bella Kolozinski. Today's session of Horn Camp Connect will feature members of KBHC's artistic team, including Artistic Director Bernard Scully, Assistant Artistic Director Nikki Labonte, and KBHC faculty member Aaliyah Danielle. We'll hear exciting updates about KBHC 2025, future Horn Camp Connect guests and topics, and share some useful practice tips to get your fall off to a great start. As always, before we jump into the session, a few Zoom housekeeping items. So now that everyone is able to hear the presentation, we've muted all participants. Please stay muted for the duration of the session unless one of our presenters asks you to unmute. If you click on participants at the bottom of the screen, you should see a participant list pop up with your name at the top. If the name associated with your Zoom account is different from your own name, please click on the blue More button to get your name. Select Rename and enter your name. If you'd like to include your pronouns with your name, please do. If you click on Chat at the bottom of the screen, you should see the chat box appear. Comments posted in the chat are affected by the drop-down menu above the text box. Depending upon your selection, your comments may be viewed by everyone or by individual participants. Each time that you enter a comment into the chat, please double check your selection so that your comment is seen by your intended audience. And with that, I'll hand the session off to Bernard.
Thanks, Bella. Hi, everybody. So good to see you all here. Thanks for joining us for this kickoff episode of Horn Camp Connect. Hey, Nikki. Hey, Aaliyah. So the three of us today, we're going to be chatting. We're going to be talking about this past summer, some recapping of the Horn Camp. We got a lot of exciting stuff. I think that, maybe not so much for me, but for you two, you got some cool stuff coming up. Exciting things about next summer's camp. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. If people have questions during the session, feel free to maybe throw some things in the chat. We'll try to get to that. So how y'all doing?
Doing so good. So excited to be back with you guys after the summer off. And yeah, we had a great camp last year. Lots of really amazing moments, amazing getting to know a lot of new participants, a lot of old and familiar participants, old just in the sense of familiar, not in terms of the age bracket, young and familiar participants. Yeah.
It's like you're my old friend, Nikki. What I mean,
That's
you know what I mean.
right. Old and good friend, right?
Right.
I get it, I'm trying my best. I'm about halfway through this cup of coffee, but I should be more coherent by the time I get to the end of it. So thanks
Well,
for
and then a
very
little
much.
mix of three here. I shouldn't be talking about old because I'm not the one. I'm not going to bring that up anymore. And you were doing Women on the Street too. I mean, that was to me a real highlight.
That's right. And, if you haven't checked that video out, it's still posted to our Facebook and I believe our Instagram as well. You should absolutely check it out. And I mean, I love the video. I love getting to put it together. And the other places that I went to work that summer, many people from those places, including my regular place of employment, have come up to me to say, "Oh my God, I loved that video. That sounded so fun." And I think it's great that they all saw it. It also, makes me a little nervous, but it's fine. It's good. So if you haven't checked it out,
Couple new memos from HR, maybe.
that's right. That's right. I did get an email from the Calgary Philharmonic social media coordinator that
Nice.
she really loved it. Would I be interested in doing something with Calgary? But don't worry, that's a proprietary KBHC thing, so that's exclusive content you can only get
It's okay.
here.
It's okay. We'll work it out in the courts. It's fine.
That's right. I'm not gonna cheat a licensing fee. Awesome.
Well, Aaliyah, like what? I mean, for you, like what were some of the highlights, maybe for this past summer's camp? Because you were there on faculty for the first time, which was awesome.
Yes,
I gotta
it felt
say.
very interesting because obviously my trajectory through camp has been I've gone the like camper to faculty pipeline, if we want to call it that. So it's interesting
That's what we call
too.
it, actually.
Yeah, but like I think it was kind of weird at first because like all my friends are still on staff, and I was like, oh wait, I'm not like I'd be like doing staff things and be like, wait, I'm not like on staff, but
Hey, you said all your friends, but I thought
I say most.
Generous.
But yeah, so I think it was cool. I also, like at the beginning of this year, got to cover a sabbatical at Lawrence, which I think helped a lot with like knowing how to kind of like fulfill the faculty duties at camp. So it was a nice kind of reminder and different way to apply all of those skills that I learned
Wait a
at
minute. You're on the
Lawrence. So
faculty of Lawrence School of Music now?
no, I just covered Anne's sabbatical like at the beginning of the year. She was working on a recording project.
This year, I'm sorry, like the beginning of like January or now?
January. So like, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Well,
But yeah,
that's awesome. You were on faculty at Lawrence.
it was cool. Yeah. I also felt like a baby there too. So, that's my career phase. I just always feel like a child in the midst of like, older people, but it's okay. We need different age
Keep it while you
perspectives.
can. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Bernard, that might be a relatable sensation for you, or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. No. Yeah, that's how I feel about everything now. No, the opposite. No, yeah, hold on to that while you can. Baby is good. I'm sure. Well, they're so lucky to have you. So, how many students were there?
14. It was a lot. It was going from like 0 students to that many students was like really mentally exhausting. But
But
yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
it was good practice for the load at camp as well, because that's also a lot.
Right. So you went. But that's interesting because you did the sabbatical replacement, and then you were doing that for like 6 months or something, which gave you probably the most experience you'd ever had teaching at a collegiate level at a conservatory.
Hmm.
So it was made. Then you went to the Horn Camp, and probably felt a little overwhelming. I mean, I do remember first time I was on faculty at the camp, and it was a lot. I remember that. It's a
Yeah.
real shift. Your concentration is different. So yeah, well, so what from your experience teaching then in higher ed and now at the Horn Camp, I mean, what are some of the things that you've enjoyed most about that?
I actually really enjoyed working with a lot of the adult students at camp. Like my ensemble was an adult ensemble, and a lot of the private lessons I had with like people that were older than me. Like I feel like I always have this kind of imposter syndrome about like what can I tell someone who's like lived so much more life than I have. But I feel like it's just like this exchange of information. Like I'm teaching them maybe something about horn or whatever we're talking about, and like it's like we're both learning things from each other, which I've really enjoyed. And I didn't like of course, in your traditional, music ed degrees, they don't really talk, it's more about like teaching children and less about like the kind of lifelong learning and kind of engaging with older adult learners. And so that was really cool to like experience firsthand.
Ooh, we just got something in the chat saying Aaliyah was an excellent ensemble
Thanks, Sue.
leader. No doubt. Well, seems like you both had pretty unique, interesting experiences at camp. Nikki as a host of a show, literally.
What? That's the one thing I'm known for before I go. It's all right.
I mean, we need that. And Aaliyah for the first time. Well, that's great. That makes me really excited to hear you say that. Yeah, I had a great time at camp. I mean, I thought it was, we were all full up. We had over 50 people each week. And that was, I got to say, like, from being a part of this camp since the very beginning, that's a really different thing because it really wasn't common. And Nikki, you went to the camp as a young student. You probably don't remember 50 people there a week. I mean, that's a lot. Maybe like when you were coming, it was like maybe 30.
Yeah, it's a lot of people, and I mean, it's great to see that the camp has grown and that people are really interested and that more people come every year and we get repeats and we get new faces every time, and I think that's always really exciting. Somehow, even with all of the changing people, it feels like the same place, it feels like a real great place of camaraderie and growth. And I think all of us have gone through the KBHC pipeline. I guess Bernard, you were never technically a participant, but
I was just the pipe.
just the pipe, not the line. But all of us have had that relationship with camp, and I still remember a lot of like the people that I roomed with when I was at camp, and they have all gone on to do really amazing things on the Horn. And I haven't stayed in touch with them as much as I wanted, but I follow them on Facebook and everything, and it's great to see them doing really well. And it's fun to have that little, even though it was just a couple weeks in the cabin in New Hampshire that didn't have screens, so we had to use mosquito nets. It's a real bonding experience, and
we're in a better place now, right?
Exactly, and a real moment of growth, and I still remember those things, and I think I'll always have that connection to those people, going through that experience. So it's fun now, and maybe Aaliyah, you feel the same way, to be able to contribute to that, from the other end, and be a part of that teaching experience and that environment for the students, so you can give them hopefully a fraction of what you got out of it,
Yeah, totally. And I think like I only did camp for 1 year because then COVID happened, but like as a camper anyway. But that was like, I feel like that year and kind of those 2 years going into COVID was really like a big push for all of the things that I'm like getting into now and doing career wise. So yeah, it definitely feels really great to be able to kind of contribute that and hopefully like be that catalyst for someone coming after me too. It's really meaningful.
Aaliyah, in terms of that, like, I'm curious because we hadn't talked about it before. Like, you say it's related to your career or it helped you in that regard. Like, how did you feel the camp helped you in that way?
I think generally because I did my bachelor's in music ed, so in most schools, there's like kind of a lesser expectation of how well you perform, like as an ed major. So I feel like camp was one of the first places where it was just like, oh, you just play the horn and like you can be good at the horn. It doesn't matter if you're like an education major or something like that. So I feel like even just having that kind of like secondhand validation of like just like try to play well. It doesn't like matter if you want to be a teacher or you want to be an orchestral player or something like that. Kind of for me was like mentally really like it opened my mind a lot to be like, oh, I can do, if I want to teach, I can do that well. And I can like also play well. I don't have to like pick one lane and only stay in there. So yeah, and then that kind of led to how I approach grad school and now doing all the other multi-hyphenate things that I do. Yeah.
That's cool to hear you say, because often I don't think about that as much sometimes, like what the environment may lend to people in some ways. We just sort of have created the environment we have. And But I got to say that actually, it just makes me really happy to hear you say that, because that's one, when Jesse and I first started to kind of think about the curriculum and how we would keep some of the things from the past that, you know, Nikki would have experienced, yet maybe change it for sort of an evolving world, you know, so to speak. That was one of the things we talked about, is that we really need to let people be themselves at this camp, because obviously symphonic playing, you know, Nikki, you're a great example of somebody who's gone on that path, is one of our most famous avenues as a horn player. You know, no shortage of repertoire, no shortage of positions, but not everybody who plays the horn necessarily wants to do that, or maybe they want to do it not as much or not all the time, because there are so many other things to do with the horn. The horn's one of the most versatile instruments in the whole world, and becoming more versatile day by day, largely because of the work you're doing, Aaliyah. Like you're like forging a new path. So we wanted to make sure people felt that support. I mean, a lot of us talked about that, just so we built that kind of equity into the curriculum. So it really makes me happy that you felt that and didn't feel like pressured or something to do certain things. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I think another great reason that that's an important part of the curriculum is obviously super awesome things, and you know, like really exploring the boundaries of what the horn can do. But even if you stick to that symphonic path, right? You play all that music, and you teach and you do different things. I was talking to Aaliyah before this, that tonight I'm going into work and I'm playing an EDM show, you know, as a part of my like regular symphonic job, right? So it's important, even if you have a even if you have a traditional path, you know, you're still playing music from other avenues. I don't just play, you know, Beethoven every week, right? You know, I don't know that
every
that
other
would
week.
be a fun every other week. Sometimes it feels like love Beethoven.
I'm just kidding. Love us some Beethoven.
Love it.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, yes. So the traditional workspaces, the symphonies, bands, you know, military bands, those are traditional positions that we think of with horn. They're changing too. You know, they're getting on the bandwagon. They're realizing they can't keep building audiences if they only play one kind of music. As much as we love it, and some people might like that, but they have to do different kinds of music, probably just to survive. You know, EDM shows probably going to, you know, draw a whole new contingent of an audience who then they might be interested in the next week where you play Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto too. Like, oh, I like this orchestra. What's next week? Oh, I don't know this music, so I go to that. I mean, I think it's just an inevitable strategy for survival for the organization. So we can probably expect more of it.
Definitely. We've been doing a lot of like crossover programming. We did, to actually start our season officially, we did like a Tchaikovsky Drake program where this composer has like fused Tchaikovsky 5 and a bunch of Drake songs. And you know, I gotta admit, I was a little skeptical. All right, sometimes those things are really cool and sometimes they're really not cool, but I have never seen a symphonic audience more lit. Like, it was crazy in there by the end. I mean, you know, there was a rapper, there were like vocalists, there was a drum set, there's a drum kit, everything was there. Like, you know, and so by the end, it felt more like a Drake concert, like with these great Tchaikovsky symphonic moments. And it was, I don't know, you know, we play these shows and you can play a great program. You know, last week we played Brahms 4 and Beethoven Piano Concerto 5, and like the audience loved it. And it's great, and it's a great energy, but it's a really different energy for like a Drake show. And it's cool for me to experience that, and I hope it's cool for the audience to experience that too, and have that experience in a concert hall that, you know, normally it's like, okay, do I clap now or do I clap later, right? Like,
so you're gonna get is going to be a Kendrick Drake thing next time or what?
I don't know. I don't know. I know Drake is, you know, currently in the middle of a heated rap battle. I guess he's losing probably, but you know, maybe the composer will come up with a.
Well, that's why maybe next concert you can just do a Schumann Brahms, you know, but a battle, because they were kind of fighting over the same woman, right?
Drake.
Who wins? Who is going to win this one? I like it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, what do you guys have? Because speaking of exciting projects and things like that, what do y'all have coming up this year? Anything on the docket that you're looking forward to?
Oh yeah, you guys.
Sure. Well, I can't talk about everything yet, but there is something very exciting happening next summer. That's all I can say. I am writing new music and hopefully recording an album in February. So I'm very in the thick of grant writing and music writing and trying to keep all my deadlines. That has been very it's been testing me, I'll put it that way. And also word limits, I hate them. I'm learning that trying to articulate like my entire career vision in like 250 words is really hard to do.
You should just try doing fewer things and then you just spend less words
True.
describing things.
Yeah.
Stop being
I'll
so
just-
successful and be easier.
I'll just nap a lot more than I already do. But yeah, so that's been really exciting. It's actually interesting talking about like the kind of these new models of orchestral playing, because that's kind of the whole concept behind the album. So I write a lot of genre fusion music, and this one particularly is going to be primarily based in like the funk and soul idiom, but I'm orchestrating it as this kind of like chamber orchestra with different, like sometimes I'll be singing, sometimes I'll be playing horn, sometimes I'll also have like a trumpet and trombone player playing with me. So I don't know, it's kind of weird. I don't like really have anything to base it off of because no one's really doing that, especially like in the recording world right now. But I really love orchestra and I really love funk. So I was like, well, let's just like do them at the same time because why not? So that's definitely going to take up most of my time the next 6 to 8 months. And then I'm going to be the featured artist at ASU Horn Day, Arizona State Horn Day in April, which is where I got my bachelor's from. So that's also kind of a cool, like full circle moment to be able to go back and do the thing that I was always like, oh my gosh, I want to play like that. And now I'm like playing like that. It's weird. But so those are the things that I can talk about. There's some other stuff happening, but you know, waiting on confirmations and permissions to share. Oh, and I just learned a couple of days ago that I'm going to be the lead editor for IHS's online music sales platform. So if you're looking for new horn music, feel free to check that out as well.
That's some huge stuff. Congrats.
That's awesome. Can't wait to see what the secret project is. I'm excited.
I think you're gonna see it and be like, oh, but I just
I
can't.
don't think I will. It's usually not
We're
my
on
reaction.
bated breath.
You check
cannot wait.
that video that Julie shared in the chat. That's usually not the reaction. Oh. Bernard, what about you? What do you have coming up?
Oh boy. Well, got some cool concerts. I'm kind of just doing kind of a variety of things now during the year, but I have a cool thing coming up in 2 weeks. I'm going to Uruguay, Montevideo, Uruguay, which I've never been to before. I've been to Argentina quite a bit. Uruguay is, for those of you that may not know the geography, I mean, I certainly didn't, is right above Argentina, kind of between Argentina and Brazil. And their culture is really, I mean, I think it's just, you know, all countries in the world, but Latin American countries sometimes get lumped together culturally, and I think there's really distinctive differences, you know, between those cultures. And this is a brass and percussion festival, so we're going to be working with the Montevideo Youth Symphony and many of the young brass players and percussion players from the country. I think it's just Uruguayan, and a lot of faculty are from Argentina, Uruguay, and a couple other places in Latin America. So I'm really excited about it. That's coming up soon. Have a cool concert in Texas for those who might live. Texas is a big place, but if you're close to Houston or can get to Houston, in November 21st, I'm doing a solo recital with percussion and horn, which I've never done before, with my colleague in the River Oaks Chamber Orchestra, which is based in Texas, Matt McClung, who's an amazing percussionist. So we're doing a really cool program of Dragons in the Sky, which is a piece for multimedia and like huge percussion battery and horn. And then we're doing another piece by Vern Reynolds, horn vibes, Alec Wilder, and then we're doing some horn vibraphone, straight up jazz standards. So if you want to get a variety of things going on, that's going to be fun. November 21st at Flavin Hall in Houston, Texas. I have a new album that's going to be coming out hopefully soon. If you read the recent IHS It talked about, there's an article, it's all music of my mentor, hero, teacher, Douglas Hill, who was a former faculty at KBHC, but obviously well known for his, he was president of IHS. He, longtime professor at University of Wisconsin-Madison, probably the greatest horn teacher, at least in my humble opinion, that's ever existed. Coolest guy ever. So this is all his music. None of it's been recorded yet. That should be coming out hopefully early 2025. We had a little production hang up the last couple months, but now we're back on track. So just got to get a couple last things finalized. So I'm excited about that. And see, anything else that's kind of cool. Oh, and I have a new book that just got published. This is a cool project that's been going on since 2021. It's called Consilience. You can order it on Amazon, although it's kind of expensive, so sorry about that. I didn't determine the price. And it is actually a multidisciplinary or a transdisciplinary project that I had the good pleasure of doing with one of my colleagues here at the university, who is a contextual engineering professor, and our mutual student, who has been my horn student since they were a freshman, Jess Mingy, and now PhD student here. So we got to work, the three of us, with many collaborators around the world. We traveled to Bolivia to learn indigenous music from Aymara people, which was one of the most enlightening things I've ever done, humbling. And we went to Sierra Leone, got to learn indigenous music by Mende and Temne musicians. And we decided to write this book in the middle of this project. So it was very cool. So it's kind of a relationship between music and technology. I've never done anything like it. Didn't think I could ever write a book on it, but here it is. I got, my 5 copies. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I think it's pretty cool. Obviously, it's a short book too, so it's not that big. It's really, really small. Has a lot of pictures, so even I can read it.
Picture book. All right.
A lot of pictures. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat from Julie, which was, what does consilience mean?
That's a good question. I didn't know that before we. So any biology fans here? I mean, so E.O. Wilson, famous biologist.
Biology fans in the KBHC overlap.
Everybody's just left the podcast. Yeah.
The Venn diagram of those two circles, they're just two separate circles. There's no overlap.
Yeah, never were there any. Well, I mean, so E.O. Wilson, probably one of the most famous biologists. He wrote a book in the late 90s called Consilience. And basically what it means is when two seemingly different ideas or disciplines, concepts now intersect and find a commonality, there's a consilience with it. So that this book is not about biology. The subtitle of this, unlike the E.O. Wilson book, is learning about ourselves by applying indigenous traditions to Western music and technology. So that's what it actually is about. But the term itself is that consilience between technology, music, indigeneity, which is something that I think for a lot of us who play horn and are steeped in classical music, we don't think about that very much. And it's something that we should, I think about a lot. So that's what it means, if that makes sense. Consilience.
Totally. And I also need to issue now a formal apology to Michael Enright, because I did exclude him. That Venn diagram circle does overlap because Michael took a course from EO. So, you learn something every single day. And that's the
Michael.
So, formal apology.
You just alienated one of our. That's good.
No, I'm so sorry, Michael. I didn't mean to. Again, I'm like here on the coffee thing, so I'll get there.
That's a nice mug, by the way.
I know, it is a nice mug. Where is it from? The Kendallbits Horn Camp. I've got back to work in Calgary. We just started our season up. I had a fun summer of travel and teaching and playing and lots of things. I got a lot of hikes in, which is great. I'm still gonna get a couple more hikes in before the snow comes and socks us in here in Calgary. I've got a couple guest principal things in the works. One of them will be with Palm Beach Opera. So if you'd like to escape whatever your cold winter.
You say Palm Beach? Wait, Palm Beach.
The Palm Beach Opera.
Palm Beach. Okay.
Palm Beach Opera in Palm Beach, Florida. If you would like to escape whatever your cold winter temperature is, you can come down and hear La Traviata, featuring yours truly on guest principal horn. It's going to be a really fun gig for me because I am from that area, so I get to stay with my mom and play a gig, and that'll be fun. So anyway, but yeah, lots of fun stuff coming up this season. You know, we've got your EDM show. We've got a bunch of classical stuff. Bruckner 8 is coming down the pipeline, and I am getting more and more nervous about it every day. But it's looking like a great season lineup for us here, and so I'm excited.
Would you agree, Nikki? Would you agree that Bruckner was like one of the heavy metal artists from like the 1800s?
Yeah.
So you're like a rock star. I mean, you're like an 1800s rock star when you play that piece.
Yeah,
which
I'm
you
sure
are.
when we play Bruckner 8, it'll be the same vibe as that Tchaikovsky Drake show that I mentioned.
Hey, good music is good music.
I know. I'm currently in the process of trying to fall in love with that piece. It's currently seeming very overwhelming, and to be honest, that's a skill that we have to do a lot. It's like find the things that you love about music that can seem intimidating or unapproachable. So I am currently thinking of all of the ways that I love Bruckner and not all of the things I'm worried about.
Well, doesn't it, like, Bruckner, to me, like one movement is what, like 20 some minutes long or something?
So long. It's
You know, so it's kind of the opposite of TikTok. It's like, you know, the 1800s version of TikTok meant sitting in one place for an hour and a half and just listening to one thing in one key, you know. So
even if I just want to listen through it, it's like, okay, I need to sit down, like turn all the lights off, get really focused so that I can actually just listen through it. Speaking of announcements, do we have anything fun to share about KBHC 2025 next year?
well, we do have a new venue, but we can't say where it is yet because there's some details that have not been worked out. But that's okay. Just trust us that it's awesome. You're going to love it. And facilities are great. Definitely what we, you know, on par, if not better than what we've had before. For those of you that may not know, our previous venue, the White Mountain School, which was the very first venue that the Horn Camp was started in the 90s when I first started doing it, before we moved to Ogons for the many years. We moved back there post-pandemic and had been there for 3 years now. They sadly had to close because it just, you know, one of those things where maybe boarding schools aren't as popular as they used to be. So nothing having to do with the quality of the school or anything. It's an amazing place, so beautiful, and we were all very sad. We found out a week before the camp started, so that was a shock. But we still got to do the camp; it didn't affect us. But we had to strategize a new place. So we do have a new venue. I probably can say it. Can I say like the state it's in? It's in New England. How about that?
New England.
Still very, you know, not the state it has been in. So
Got it.
got it? Yeah.
Wow, we are really offering a lot of teasers.
Yeah. It's awesome, and I mean, I think that what I'm excited about, because I've actually been to this place, is they got multiple performing venues that are really, really nice with great pianos. We haven't always, because we've been trying to, we've had these wonderful places, but Ogons and White Mountain School, you know, their primary thing they're known for has not been the quality of their pianos. So, which is okay. I mean, can't be perfect. This place has really good pianos, plus awesome performing places, which I'm excited about. So that's cool. Even their workout facilities, their sports facilities are pretty epic, I gotta say. So I may have to expand the free time to more than an hour and a half just to utilize
the horn
these things.
camp, get better at the horn, get swole. That's
Get jacked, yeah. Exactly.
If you are looking to build technique and build muscle, this is the place for you.
They even have a cafeteria in the workout place.
Oh, perfect.
That you can get your protein shake.
Jelly sandwich and, you know, just go
get your
over
creatine, get your So, and the teaching spaces are really, really nice. There's a lot of space, you know, so there's no sound bleed. really nice dining facilities, which have maybe more options than we've had before, which is great. Close to the town it's in, actually. So in walk, just literally block or maybe 2 blocks max from the downtown area, which is a really different feel than we've had in the past, which we've basically been isolated from areas. The White Mountain School was closer to Littleton, so easy 5-10 minute drive, you could get there. Ogons was obviously like you had to plan a weekend to go to the town. It was so far away. So it'll be nice, it'll be different and nice to have closer access to a relatively, quaint but bustling little town with lots of great restaurants and cool shops and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a great, Peggy and I both were able to visit it. The staff there and the people are super nice, super supportive, and it's really well set up for an arts camp like ours. And the dorm living is nice, possibly an upgrade from what we've had.
Bernard, I want to congratulate you on making it through all of those descriptions without one time mentioning the name of the place that we're going. So congratulations to you. All of you internet sleuths at home, you can be using those clues and put it together. There is no prize for putting it together, but you will know information that other people don't slightly before they find out. So,
well, I have watched my share of Blue's Clues as a parent of 3 girls. So, a clue.
A clue. Write it in your handy dandy notebook, right?
That's right.
Marcy asked dates for the 2025 camp, and Aaliyah has already responded in the chat. Awesome. June 7th through 22nd. So mark your calendars. If you don't have a 2025 calendar, go out and buy one today. And the first thing you should put on it is KBHC 2025, June 7th through 22nd. So make sure you put those in there. We are super, super excited for camp. It's
one thing I should mention, because for those, there might be some people here. I mean, I recognize a lot of the names here, but you may not know that we are 2 one-week sessions. So these dates in here actually reflect 2 separate weeks. Most people go to only 1, but you're welcome to go to 2. I should also really mention that we have scholarships, a lot of them. Like, we are generous with scholarships, and we have no age limit anymore on scholarships. So if you are an adult, somebody who's an adult enthusiast, a professional, semi-professional player that would like to attend the camp, but maybe some of the funding is not always there. And I know, it's not cheap to go to the camp sometimes, and we totally understand. We have a mechanism for scholarship. You simply have to apply. Obviously, the scholarships definitely apply to high school and college age students, but no longer any cap for age for college age students. So really, the scholarship program that we have is open to any and all. So don't let that deter you. Please apply. And that application is usually due around March 1st. So you can get this information very soon. It'll be very similar to last year, so you can just look at that, and it'll be pretty much the same, even if we haven't updated it. Sorry, Nikki, I totally disrupted you. Go on.
No, that was great. I totally appreciate you plugging that. I know that for me, the only way that I could attend camp was with a scholarship, and I know that scholarships make a big difference to a lot of people. So yes, if you're considering camp, but it seems out of your price range, please apply for a scholarship. We would love to have you, and we want to make it work so that you can come out and join us, because it really is a special place. I'm not just saying that because they pay me to say it, really.
Wait, say it again. Wait.
This meeting's being recorded, so you can go back and play that.
Oh, okay.
Christy wants to know, will the camp program schedule be similar?
Likely, yes. I mean, so for those of you that may not know, like, our primary goal, for the campers to come is to get as much individual attention as possible. So that's why we put people in small learning groups, usually 4, maybe 5. A couple of the classes are a little bigger, but we're still working more. The one thing that'll be different is the fundamentals class is still going to be parsed up even a little bit more. We struggle with that just because there's our one thing we can't control is the amount of time that's in a week. So I wish we could. Anybody have any ideas on that? Okay. Expand time and space for the week. So
I'll work on it. That's a
Nikki,
secret. That's a Leah's secret project. Actually, it's working.
I'm counting on you too. I mean, you're the best. You're the best we have. You're the best we have. We need to figure that out. I can count on anybody. So, but we can't right now. So some of the classes had to be a little bit bigger, but I think we're really restructuring it a little bit to still, and now we have the space. That's been another issue where we haven't always had space to have the same class going on like in 3 or 4 iterations at once. So now we will, which is really cool. So some of the bigger classes will be smaller, which is again conforms to our core value, which is as much individual attention as possible. Everybody gets 2 private lessons. These small learning classes kind of pervade throughout. Now everybody gets their own solo coaching, no longer in groups. So we've just been figuring out more and more ways to individualize this for you. And for anybody listening today who's been to the camp or who's curious about this, when you have these small groups, something to think about. Really, the reason they can be so effective is that now the student and the teacher have a lot of flexibility with what goes on in these classes. So it's not like you go to a class and it's like, teachers like, you are going to learn orchestral excerpts today. That's all we're doing, and you don't talk. It's not like that. It's the opposite, where the students will go in, say it's adult amateur, 4 adult amateurs of equal experience and ability come in. Each person has a different idea about what they want to work on. Like one person wants to work on high range, one person wants to work on their Mozart concerto, one person wants to talk about maybe something they composed. It's all these different things in the course of an hour. They need to communicate. They can communicate this with the faculty, who will be open to working with them as best they can. They may have their own agenda that they want to push, but also, so it's this nice confluence. My teacher, Doug Hill, he always used to say, we have the responsible student, or we can be the responsible student. I mean, we come in prepared, we come in taking everything that we can, putting on the table, but then we have the respondable teacher, the teacher who doesn't just assert, but also is malleable and then kind of evolves that class. So that's what these small classes really can be. That's why they're so special. They could be anything, but it means that the students participating should be proactive in bringing the things that they want to work on to these courses, and not just hoping the teacher will just tell them. I mean, they will do that if you let them, and sometimes to varying degrees. But ideally, it should be much more of a dialogue. So that's a real core value of the camp. And then we're just trying to keep making more of that and less of the big classes where you just sort of talked at, which I think we largely have taken out. But the things we're offering, like the solo class, the horn choir, mock edition, evening sessions, all of these, well, there might be some change in the evening session. There always is, depending on what we decide to do. And Nikki might literally just have her own show going on the entire time. So get ready for that.
I'm just gonna run up and accost people all evening long. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that is really great about camp, that we have retained and also shaped and been more purposeful about in recent years, is like that ability to get that one-on-one instruction and that individualized attention. When you go into one of those group lessons, it's your time, and the faculty member, of course, can have things to say or things on their mind, but ultimately it's your time, and we want you to get the most out of it. And I remember an early experience that I had at camp, to share that. I had an open studio with Peter Currow, who later became my professor, in part because of this experience where I went to the open studio. It was me and my roommate, Allison Dresser, who's now third horn in Indianapolis, who's awesome. And Allison and I sat there, and we just said, he was like, okay, what problems are you guys having on the horn? And we were, 2 high school girls, so lots of problems. So we were having a lot of issues on the horn. So it was not an easy time, right? And, we shared those, and he would, we'd play something to demonstrate that. He'd give us an exercise. It would improve immediately. And then he'd give us like homework, ways to work on it. And we ran out of stuff in 45 minutes, which is hard because it was 2 high school girls with all of their, okay, well, I'm not really good at this. I'm not really good at this. I'm not really good at this. And it was like a really productive hour for me because it was so catered to what what my issues were. And being able to share that and have that experience, really incentivized me to pursue an education there and everything like that. But that's a big part of camp is that it's a really personalized experience. We know that everybody is in a different place in their horn playing journey and career if that's what you're interested in. And so we try to make camp a space where you can improve no matter what your starting ability is. You can find ways to engage yourself and to keep having that forward progress, you know. Even if you're better than a high school girl who does not know how to lip trill, please help. Like, you know.
I think something that's also really special about just the environment at camp is the fact that like the way that we do meals, you know, all together, and you know, you see people in passing in between, you know, the sessions and during evening session. It's not like all the faculty sit over here and all the high schoolers sit over here, unless we like intentionally do something, you know, like that. But it's all like everyone's just kind of all mixed in. And there's also been a lot of times where maybe I didn't have a lesson or didn't have a master class with a faculty member, but have been able to like ask them questions about things, even if it's not, or, you know, reaching out to someone and saying like, hey, we're not on the schedule, but do you have an extra 30 minutes or an extra hour or something to like hear me play something? And there's always, I know like Bella did some lessons to with some campers as well, and so also reaching out to the staff and just kind of this cross sharing. I feel like camp really lacks this kind of like hierarchical vibe, and everyone is contributing to everybody at all levels, and I think that's like a really unique aspect of the environment at camp.
Totally. I think a thing that you shared earlier on, Aaliyah, that is resurfacing in my now more coffee fueled brain is you mentioned that, you know, it's this sharing of information, and it's my policy always that I think that everybody who plays the horn is better at one thing, at least one thing, than I am. Even my students, like even people that I teach, even people that I work with, they're all better at least one thing, you know? And so there's always something to be gained. There's something for me to be gained by the people that I'm in a position of teaching, and there's something that they can learn. And, you know, it's that exchanging of information. And I remember this summer I had a conversation with one of the participants about, you know, I had like a soft palate leak, and I didn't think that anybody else had that problem. And I, you know, did some physical therapy exercises on my own to help with it and all that stuff. And it just kind of came up, and we shared strategies and things like that. It was a really cool experience, you know, that I don't know would have happened in another place, you know, that we get to teach at, you know, sometimes the formality of things and the limited age range can really narrow down your teaching possibilities. So it's always fun to have those experiences that, you know, you wouldn't be able to have anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to hear you both speak on this because it's something I've thought a lot about. And even as we've gone post-pandemic, I still feel there are some ways we can keep improving. I changed the solo class last year because I started to realize there was actually sort of, I didn't think about it because we had it as a holdover from like the previous camp. There was sort of like an inherent competition that was emerging in the solo class, kind of like who is good enough or who is ready enough to play a solo, you know, determined by one person, which has always been the case in the past. No one thought of it as like a particularly negative thing until all of a sudden you start to realize, you know, it's like, well, should we really be doing this? Like, this is kind of against the ethos of the camp. So one of the things I basically did with that and a couple of other things is I took out what I would actually just call like the ideology of competition, which I think gets put forth unspokenly in music as not that I mean, I'm kind of a competitive person personally, and I like competition, but I don't think it should be used as the backdrop of education. I think it's something that emerges. So like in the old days, you know, everybody had to do those mock editions and stuff like that. Everybody had to do. So now it's like people can choose. So if you want to do the mock edition, we have it. You know, Jesse arranges this brilliantly where now people can observe it. This is completely voluntary. So people that want to do it can engage with this and they can learn the material over the week. They do not have to. And then everything else, aside from the voluntary mock edition, is without competition, essentially, or only as much as you wish to do it within yourself, which I think is great because, you know, the music business, if you go into it, is competitive enough already. So we don't need to exacerbate that any more than it already is. And I think that has created what I would just call like a safer learning, more nurturing learning environment at the camp that I noticed a big difference this summer. I wasn't sure how it was going to work out. I don't know how you both felt about it, but I noticed there was a difference with that. And also the solo coaching, for instance, having all the faculty or many of them rotate in. So it's not just like one voice with that. So trying to get the multitude of voices involved with everything that we do. So we're trying to do more. It was a really good question. Whoever asked, was it Crystal who asked that question? But we're always trying to make it better. We're open to feedback. We're always open, and we take all of it to heart, and we try to address it the best we can. Again, the biggest challenges we have, honestly, have been time and space, literally. Now we have more space, so we can do a few more of the things that we couldn't. Time, still working on that one. So.
Absolutely. I know there are a couple questions in the chat. I am absolutely going to get to them. But first, I think it would be a good time to share one of our other offerings. One of the other things that makes camp fun and exciting is this season of Horn Camp Connects, which you are currently participating in. Congratulations, round of applause to you. Hooray! We have got a super fun lineup, and this year we've kind of divvied it up so that each one of us will be hosting a episode. So why don't we take a little bit and talk about those? I think Bernard, right? You're first up here.
Yeah, I'm first one up, and this is going to be November. Oh wait, 23rd. I got to look at the date. Somebody correct me. Is that right?
Yes, it's the 23rd.
Sorry. Like, wait, somewhere in November. Okay, so this is going to be featuring one of our longtime faculty, one of the most amazing people in the industry, who we've been so fortunate to have on our faculty, who now has just joined our board of directors. So we were very excited to be featuring Lin Baird, who is a professor of horn at Western Michigan University. I've known Lin for a long time. We actually went to school at University of Wisconsin together. She studied with Doug Hill. She was finishing her doctorate degree when I was just starting. So I didn't get to know her that well when I was at school, because then she was off doing all these awesome things. She played with Milwaukee Symphony for a little bit, and then she was a number of teaching jobs right out of college. It was kind of unheard of, but knowing her, it's not surprising. So she is one of the most, I think, when I say successful, I don't just mean her students do the typical prototypical thing only. Her students are doing all sorts of things, but I would just say successful in the regard that, like her teacher, Doug Hill, she could teach literally anybody. I was going to joke that Doug could teach a fish to breathe water. He's just able to do that. And she has that ability in a way that's really, really unique. She's multi-talented. So we'll be just kind of talking about all sorts of things. I'll be interviewing her a little bit. She's going to do a guided warm-up, I think, which is, if you've done that at our camp, when she's featured that, it's been one of the more popular warm-ups. She has a new album that just came out of all newer works by female composers. I think mostly living female composers, if not all. Her website, by the way, is groundbreaking. That was her DMA project, was basically a compendium of music for horn, and now I think it's expanded to brass in general, by women composers. So pretty impressive person she is, to say the least. So I'll be interviewing her and just letting her do most of the show.
Fantastic. That sounds like a really fun episode. I am missing the document in front of me. Who is the next episode?
Jesse's is in January, and I
Right.
believe he's going to be interviewing some faculty member. I don't know if it'll be a new one, or maybe you know more about that, Bernard.
I'll speak just a little bit from what I know. Yeah, so he's going to be doing the one in January, and it'll be probably interviewing one or maybe two brand new faculty, because we will have definitely one, maybe two brand new faculty this summer. So watch out for that. And he'll be interviewing and showcasing.
Man, so many fun new secrets. So many good reasons to stay tuned this year. Oh,
yeah.
That effect, Aaliyah. Didn't know you could do that. I'm gonna spend the rest of the session trying to figure it out. And then I think it's me after that. I'm doing the March episode, which is Women's History Month. We're going to be featuring some amazing women horn players and talking to them about their career path and their journey. And I think it's going to be really fun. We did a little feature maybe a couple of years ago just on our social media, featuring a lot of women and the things that they were doing and highlighting that. And so we are gonna do that, but in video form. I think it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Gonna be fun to get those guests together, and I am, like super excited to get to talk with all of these people who have influenced me, and I'm sure influenced many other women horn players out there. So I think it's gonna be a really fun episode. It's taking shape now, so I can't wait to see the final form that it takes and share that with all of you guys. So yeah, stay tuned in March. Oh, Leah, you're after that, right?
Yeah, and so I'll be closing out things in May. One of the things my professional developments recently is I joined a quartet called Luminoso Quartet. It's a horn quartet that features me. The founder is Amanda Collins Escalante. She's the professor of horn at University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. It also has Lynette Lopez Compton, who's the professor of horn at Oklahoma State University, and Larry Williams, who teaches at Washington Adventist University, but also plays with like the Gateways Brass Collective and Black Pearl Chamber Orchestra. He's like the founder of American Studio Orchestra. Larry's a wizard. If you don't know Larry Williams, you should Google him, and then you will be very impressed. But what's really cool about Luminoso, and something that's kind of a theme in the work that I've been doing, is that each member of the quartet is at kind of like a different phase of life, a different decade of life. So like I'm in my 20s, Amanda's in her 30s, like getting ready to be 40s, Lynette's in her 50s, and Larry's in his 60s. So it's cool because we all have this different levels of professional experience, but it's all kind of this like, it all mixes. And we did our first residency at Mizzou last month, and really cool interdisciplinary, non-traditional concert experience, which is interesting because we played like the Boza horn quartet, which was intimidating. I saw Julie's question a while ago about like pieces that feel overwhelming. And for me, like, because I don't play classical music that frequently. So whenever I have to tackle something that's like that, I was like, oh my gosh, but it was fine, But we did that. And Amanda's husband is like an art history person. And so I guess there was like some person that had all of these photographs or paintings or something that were related, like a contemporary of Boza that was like someone doing visual art while Boza was writing music, and how they, the person died and they like discovered all of these things. It was really, really interesting. So it's not like we're just playing these pieces and being like, and now we will play this and blah, blah, blah. It's like, here's this piece and here's like what was going on at the time, and here's this other form of art that's happening. One of them we played, and there was like this video time lapse of one of the students at Mizzou doing a painting that we were like seeing her paint it in real time while we were performing. So it's this really cool thing, and I'm really excited to bring them on to talk about themselves because they're all very accomplished in the field, but also just to talk about different approaches to creativity. There's a lot of talk now, of course, about like how to engage audiences and how to make like these performance experiences more interesting and less like self-serving and more like this exchange of energy. And I think we do a really great job of that. So I'm really excited to have them on and talk about those things. And I don't know what day it is yet, but it will be in May. So
Awesome. So don't mark your
Sounds like that's a group that should like visit the camp sometime.
Yeah. Look at that, planting seeds here. Block off the whole month of May, folks. Block it off. Let's go.
A lot of things possible for the summer. We don't even know everything yet. So.
That's right, exactly. Well, that's awesome. It's gonna be a great season of Horn Camp Connect. And again, make sure you follow our social media and check that out for highlights and for upcoming previews and all of those things. So I think it's gonna be a fun season, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's get into. I want to get into practice tips, but first I saw Ugo. You had a question about an insurance policy for COVID, and I have an update on that. Our insurance at camp unfortunately does not reimburse program fees for individuals affected by COVID or other illnesses if they're prevented from participating. But we encourage all of our participants, faculty, and staff take appropriate precautions in advance of camp so that you arrive healthy. Please stay tuned for updated policies regarding deposit, tuition fees, whether they're refundable or non-refundable, and deadlines. We will keep our website updated as this information becomes available. I know that, we all know that post-COVID, the situation is always changing. And so we appreciate your patience and your flexibility and your understanding as we continue to develop our policy and find ways to, provide the best possible service and the best possible value and experience for all of our campers. So great question. Thanks for asking it.
Well, I think one thing, can I mention one thing about that,
Mhm.
Nikki? In terms, well, because you all probably know, like, we used to have a much more stringent COVID policy in the previous years before the World Health Organization and then the CDC basically said, none of this now applies. So we weren't under those guidelines this past summer. We did have a small COVID outbreak. This camp still went on and was very successful. I was one of the ones who actually had to be taken out because I tested positive, even though I was asymptomatic, but I didn't want to blow a billion COVID particles into the air of the fundamentals class, for the last 3 days. So now that I knew that I had it. So, but I think it's just one of the difficult things we deal with right now as we enter the endemic phase of this disease, is that now it's basically been put on the same category as like the flu, which does not have any special guidelines, but there are vaccines and things we don't have, so we're in this new reality. I wish we hadn't had that this past summer. It was kind of unfortunate, but we did the very best we can. And I thank Peggy for like making all the right decisions in that difficult moment. And, I had to make difficult decisions. So, but I'm not sure, anyways, I just wanted to say that because we're all dealing now with it. Once those organizations lifted those guidelines and restrictions, unless you have other ideas, unless anybody else, I'm happy to entertain new ideas with that. But sorry, Nikki, I didn't mean to derail.
Yeah, no, I think, we plan on paying close attention to recommendations on everything like that. And so, with camp being a long way off, that policy can be modified based on information that we receive, based on recommendations we receive. So so thanks for the question. Great question. And we are always looking for ways that we can, make everybody's experience better. So I want to actually get into the last little portion of our session, which is practice tips. And I don't know if you guys.
Somebody had a question. I saw an earlier question. Was it Julie?
Maybe we could
Julie.
talk about Julie's question, which was, oh no, there's so many things here.
Julie said, does anyone have any tips for making music more accessible when it seems overwhelming and unapproachable?
Yeah.
Any initial thoughts on that, gang? I have some. I'll lead it off. Since I'm in the middle of that self-described situation. I think the first thing to do for me is listen, and listen a lot. Usually my first listen through of a big piece, I remember the first time I listened to Mahler 3, I just listened through the whole thing, and my big takeaway for that listen was, oh God. And then I immediately put it away, and I definitely felt super intimidated, but the more that I was able to, I would listen through that piece again and again, and it felt more digestible. As you hear it, things become less new and less intimidating, less foreign, right? You're hearing those intervals, you're getting all that stuff in your ear. And that is how, you're able to approach that piece. For me, this is also a practice tip that I had planned on sharing today. So I'll just go ahead and share it now. Listening for me is the number one thing that you can do, I think, in terms of practice. And I mean that in several ways. So I will explain. There are primarily 2 ways that I think about listening. First, with listening is listening to hear the piece, listening to understand the piece, listening to hear how everything goes, get ideas, get inspired. That's super important. And that was kind of the first listening that I was sort of talking about when listening to those pieces when they're really new, hearing how it goes. I'll always do my first listening with a score. And even if you can't read a score that well, try to track a line that's not the horn line. And see if you can find something else in the piece. And even when there's a piece that I've played lots of times, I will try to find something new about the piece every single time. so that you can find something new to listen to, find something new to really get into and enjoy and all of that. And so listening to get to know the piece, listening to get ideas, listening for a sound model, totally important. The other element of listening for me that is super important is listening to mimic success. And what I mean by that is when we listen to something, for instance, if I have an audition coming up, I would listen to the excerpts. Now, at this point in my career, I pretty much know how Brahms 3 goes. I know how it goes. I know the pitfalls. I've practiced it a lot of times, right? So I'm not really listening at this point to get to know the piece. I already know the piece pretty well. There's always something new to learn, but I feel pretty comfortable on those specific measures of Brahms' Third Symphony, right? But what I'll do instead is I'll listen to mimic that feeling of success. Because here's the thing, gang. Recordings are not real. Recordings are a compilation of takes that are put together, and they never miss on recordings. They don't. People miss in real life. You know, your favorite horn player misses notes. Sorry to tell you. If your favorite horn player is me, which it's not, I miss a lot of notes, right?
You've
People
never
miss.
missed a note before. I've never heard you miss a note. I never will.
That's not true. But, you know, your favorite horn player misses notes, but on the recording, they don't. And so we can either let that affect us negatively and, oh, well, I'm never going to sound that good, because you won't, because it's not real life, right? Or we can use that for a positive. So because I know the recording never misses notes, what I'll do is if I have an excerpt like Brahms 3, I will listen to it and I'll visualize myself playing that. And I'll visualize what it feels like to do it. You know, even now I can like sometimes I'll feel tension creeping in. I'll work on releasing that. I'll feel like problems that might arise while I'm playing the excerpt, and I'll try to resolve those and visualizing that. And then at the end of the excerpt, because the recording never misses, I don't miss, right? And I hear that sensation of nailing the excerpt. And it's that little like dopamine hit of like, nailed it, good job. And I will say that to myself, even though I'm not playing the horn, right? Nailed it, awesome. And it's that positive reward that leads me to increasing confidence on that excerpt, right? Whenever we go into a situation, in the back of your mind, you know, okay, I feel like my success rate on this is 50%, which is not a really empowering success rate, yeah? But if you're padding your stats with a bunch of positives and you nailing it, you're going to be way more confident going into that, you know, performance, because you've heard yourself through visualization succeed a bunch of times. You've heard yourself nail this excerpt over and over and over again, right? So when you're approaching, getting back to Julie's question, when you're approaching a piece that seems foreign or seems difficult to manage, I would totally encourage you to, yes, listen and get to know the piece. But then even beyond that, listen to visualize that success and start getting in that habit, that mindset of like, I am nailing this. I'm so consistent. I'm nailing it every time, you know, feeling really good and really confident on it before you even start, right? Julie likes the concept of padding my stats. It's not cheating because there's no rules in music, right?
These are just the successes. This is the successes you've had in your dreamland, which is awesome.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's, you know, it feels real if you're really into the exercise, right? So for me, that's a big way that all, like, you know, I remember, for instance, to share a fun camp story, I like Shostakovich 5 for me, the low tutti was, you know, people have audition winning excerpts. That was an audition losing excerpt for me. I would play Shostakovich 5 and it was bad. I still remember this. Let me get my props here. I remember I did the mock audition at horn camp. Okay. And I played the mock audition, and I was getting comments from a faculty member who will remain unnamed. And I'm sitting there getting comments, and he's reading them, and he's like, Brahms 3, really great job, blah, 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 blah. You know, Till Eulenspiegel, great job, loved your sense of rhythm, blah, blah, blah. Shostakovich 5. And I still remember that for forever. And I had a lot of like, you know, mental blocks when it came to Shostakovich 5, probably in part from some of those traumatic experiences, you know?
That's awful.
And
Awful.
I remember I was getting ready for an audition, and like I knew that my low register was better than it was in high school, right? But for some reason I still had those blocks, and I still like just had such a hard time playing that excerpt. I was in Hawaii at the time, and I took the bus everywhere. And I decided that I was just gonna exposure therapy myself to Shostakovich 5. And I would listen to Shostakovich 5 on repeat on the bus the whole time. And I would visualize that I was playing it and that I was nailing that excerpt. And it was like the first time I kind of experimented with that. And it really, like, 30 minutes a day of just listening to Shostakovich 5 really helped me get over that mental block of like, you're not good at this excerpt, because I'm hearing myself nailing it 30 minutes every single day without even picking the horn up, So, a lot of horn playing is mental. I know we'll all say that, but it's important to support that mental side of your horn playing too, and give yourself that confidence, even, even if it might seem artificial, that feeling of success is not artificial in the moment.
This is bringing up a couple different things in my mind. I'm so glad you shared that. That was just, I'm thinking, one thing it brings up actually for those who teach, that kind of negative feedback, not always helpful, mostly not helpful, because it can literally like traumatize people by just saying, that was awful, or something. Even though, like Nikki, I mean, I've heard you play for years, like, so I think about like that mental block, but you have the ability. One thing I'm going to talk about in just a second here is like building these levels of success, but like clearly over time, like you developed your low range, you had all the skills in the world to play this piece, not like you couldn't, but now there is this kind of like moment in time when someone had just shut you down, kind of shamed you, right? That's what it was.
I mean, it was I had also been shaming myself, right?
Well, yeah. But this didn't help.
Put all
Like
the
this,
burden on this one individual at Horn Camp,
no. But I'm saying because we all do that to ourselves. Like we're always our own worst critics. So any teacher, I think, if you're interested in teaching, just know that most students, especially if you get a student who's like Nick, and Leah, like absolutely myself, so serious. Like we're trying so hard to do it, right? Like we're not like thinking, oh, I don't care about this and nothing matters. I mean, like there's no serious student that's thinking that way. So to kind of treat them as though it was like a moral failing or something to do this is not good teaching. It is not helpful. In fact, can oftentimes be, I mean, you could learn from it. You had to kind of like overcome that then. But I think as a teacher, like you don't want to be responsible for like now what your students have to overcome. Like you're supposed to be the coach. You don't see a tennis coach being like, all right, I'm going to break your arm and good luck with that. If you can overcome that, then you can do anything because I'm your coach. This is bad coaching. That's like the coaching from like the Civil War era. We don't want that.
Teaching styles.
Yeah. It's like, it's like I would even both sides it, right? It's not something to emulate, It's not like, oh, that's one of the ways.
Yeah.
It's not like that. Anything, there is an enlightened approach to teaching, and then there is the other way, which is not a way, it's just bad. I'm like, don't do that. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that because that's horrible. And we probably all had our experiences, and not that teachers even mean it, but they're just, sometimes that's the way they were taught. It's like, my teacher beat me over the head when I did that, so I'll do it to you. It's the cycle of violence,
And it's, I'm sure that faculty member does not remember doing it. I'm sure that I'm sure it was an offhand moment for them. And those blocks can come from within, right? Like the way that, even similarly, like, if you're teaching students, you have to be careful of what you say. You also have to be careful of what you say to yourself, in your internal monologue. And I had contributed much more to that block of Shostakovich 5 than that one teaching moment by,
of course,
the way that I was talking to myself.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if you're a teacher, like you're in a position of authority and you have a lot of influence over what you say. You're going to either confirm or not confirm the biased beliefs of the person you're sitting in front of you and all sorts of things. So I do think that's a good learning moment, for some people who teach. So I just wanted to say, let me add something to what you said. So I mentioned that recital I'm playing coming up, which has some music that I'm still actually, I literally cannot play it, just to let anybody know. Like I just got it and I had to like figure this stuff out. It looks really intimidating to me. But I will tell you, one of the ways you can build success. So I think a lot of what I'm taking from what you said, Nikki, is that we need to figure out strategies to lead us on a path to success, even when we feel like we can't necessarily see that clearly right away, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you have to build that confidence, even if it feels artificial at first.
Yeah, and that's like fake it till you make it, But what I've learned, the cool
Truly.
thing about brass playing, I mean, most things in life actually, is that even if you can't do something, like you literally don't have the skill, you can learn it. The brass playing is a learned activity. It's not something which people are just born with. Music is the same. I mean, even you hear these stories of very young people like Mozart. Well, guess what? Mozart's dad was the best musician in Europe, and he trained him from age 2. So it's the fact that if he didn't get good at music, that would have been weird. So yeah. So Mozart was a great composer, but we shouldn't just say, well, I'm not like that. So it's like, well, actually, we all are. The science actually shows that all of us can learn pretty much anything that we decide to put our minds to. Brass playing is a learned activity. All of us have different strengths and weaknesses, propensities towards things. We can make our perceived weaknesses our strengths over time by simply focusing on it, whatever that is. We have to gain intention to do that sometimes. We have to understand it for ourselves. So when I get these very difficult pieces of music, I'm looking at it going like, there's no way I can read through this piece of music now. So I don't. I'll listen to it, as Nikki was saying, that's hugely important. If it's a brand new piece, if you can get the composer to send a MIDI for you, that's at least somewhat helpful. Get a score. If you're not the only person in the piece, whether it's a Brahms symphony or some of the stuff I just mentioned, get the score so you can see how you fit in like right away. So what you're doing with all that, before you even attack the piece, you're preventing any misconceptions. Like you're just starting on a firm footing, clean slate, no bad habits, and then take it in chunks, little tiny chunks that you can play, and probably at slower tempos. Maybe the rule of thumb for any technical passage is half tempo. So if I get 8 bars of crazy music, I'm going to take 1 bar of that. I'm going to put it down to, if it's too high or it's kind of like only in the high register, I'm going to take it down the octave where it's easy for me, where I can build my mental model of it. This is now like the actual learning of a piece, maybe a very challenging, difficult piece. And by doing all this stuff, I am building models of success in my brain and not the opposite. Because if I just start to try to play that piece through, too much, what I'm actually telling my brain is, oh, this is how this piece goes. It's super hard and you can't play it. And therefore you'll never be able to play it. That's what happens right away, whether it's Adagio and Allegro when we're like 14 years old, first time you hear the piece, I'm going to play it. And you try to play it. You're just like, I feel like someone punched me in the face and I didn't get any notes right, so don't do that, and the thing about recordings, that's so funny. I always think of recordings are all these performances that never happened, right? But they're not bad. I think we just have to understand that. So if you don't get told that as a kid, like no one told me, I thought Barry Tuckwell was just playing everything perfectly all the time. And I thought that was bad.
I mean,
because I couldn't play.
But nobody. No.
Right, he was. You know what he told me? So you know what he told at the horn camp? I was like, oh, Mr. Tuckwell, this, because he used to be the solo coach, back in the day. Your Strauss recording, that's my favorite. He said, oh, that was so great. I just played a couple notes and I went to the booth and I had him put together like this. And I told him to turn the volume up in that one note. I'm thinking like, what? You're telling me you didn't even play through the whole passage? You just played some notes, they auto-tuned it, and then they put the volume in. He told me that. I mean, I love you, Barry, and I heard you play live, and it was pretty much perfect. But I'm saying that was like mind-blowing to me, this recording that I thought he had just played surely all the way through one time, in some hall, was like this actual, mostly electronic creation of something that lets us think that people are apparently superhuman, so
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, Aaliyah, you do a lot more recording than I do, but from what I understand, most of the time you don't even play through the piece. It's a waste of time to play through the whole piece. You're just gonna do chunks. And the edits that they can make now are so small and so smooth that, I mean, yeah, truly, you could probably just play a chromatic scale and then they can auto-tune that into whatever you want, It's true.
just
Even
you just robot voice it. You just T-Pain it. It's like
even orchestra recordings that are live, like if you see live recording on a thing, you might think, oh, okay, well, this is a live recording. No, it's just a compilation of concerts. And then after every live recording, I've participated in live recordings. After every live recording concert, you'll stick after for a patch session where you'll play through spots that maybe didn't go as well. And then they'll put that all together. And it sounds like a live performance. And you'll hear the audience clapping at the end and you'll think, wow, that was live. And it kind
that
of
was
at one point, but
The
not
illusion
now.
of life.
Yeah.
well, this is the other thing is you were talking about this. The other thing that you were talking in your last, you said a lot of stuff. I want to mention the teacher thing, but I also want to come back on that because I do think recordings should happen. I do think that we should have as many recordings as possible. I just think that it needs to be said right away to every young player that the recording process is a different artistic process than the live performance.
Mm-hmm.
And we should not have neither the twain shall meet, and the recordings can be used as great models, as you're saying, for like learning a piece. I mean, what better way, especially these produced recordings, because they have all the details taken care of. It's like the ideal. I remember the first time I heard a produced recording of the Liggity Horn Trio. That was another like freaky moment for me. I'm kind of like, I don't think this is like, who is this person playing? Because they're not human, And I realized like, oh, this was probably put together bar by bar, So, but at the same time, I'm grateful it is, because then we get this great thing to listen to, which, I mean, who doesn't? I love listening to that, and I want to hear it played really well, to learn it. But then when I go out and play that live, I need to give myself a lot of grace and say, I'm a human being. I'm connecting with the audience. But I think it's a bigger question, and this is getting, Julia, thanks for your question. That's allowing us to talk about literally everything that we've ever wanted to talk about in music. So about,
You really opened the can of worms here.
yeah. But why live performance? I think that's the big question. Like, why live performance? This is a question that's been going around for a long time. I don't have all the answers, but I think it's because live performance is a real visceral connection between the performer and the audience, that you cannot replicate in a record. That's one thing the recording can't do.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see the people. You don't know, can't feel the energy in the room. You don't hear those little mistakes or even big mistakes that make it a human performance, that is to be embraced. Actually, that's a beautiful thing. It makes us, that's what is great about being a human being. So that's one of the, I don't know if you have ideas about live performance.
To build on that, it's performer to audience, but it's also performer to performer and audience to audience.
Right. Yeah.
And like, I keep talking about the Tchaikovsky Drake show, but like that's an experience, that everybody has collectively, and the audience gives feedback and the performer is responding to it in real time. Right. And it happens, in every piece, in everything, not just like a pop show, something like that. Right. Like there is always that time for feedback, and there's something that's innately improvisatory about live performance, even when there's no improvisatory notes, right? You're still responding to the ideas. And
not yet. You're gonna be playing that Charlie Parker in a year, right?
No.
It's gonna happen.
Certainly not publicly. I'm not going to play that. but there is something that is spontaneous, and it's like I will compare it a lot to like watching a movie in a theater for the first time, right? And when you watch a movie in the theater, it's slightly different because the movie is always the same, right? But you're watching it with the audience, and you're all experiencing that together. And when there's that great, when you think of like great theatrical moments that like I didn't even get to witness a lot of these, but like I think of that scene from Alien, right? Nobody knows what's gonna happen. And then that scene happens and everybody reacts like, how cool, like how visceral to be there and see that thing for the first time with all those people. And live performing is that, but on both ends, right? It's different for the performers every time. It's not the same movie. And then the audience also gets those surprises and those really special moments that are probably not as terrifying as the chest burster scene from Alien, but maybe,
Did you know, for those cinephiles here, that scene, did you know that none of the actors, including Sigourney Weaver, knew that was going to happen except for Jeremy Irons, or what's his name? Not Jeremy Irons, the actor for that.
Yeah, that guy who had the thing coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the
I
only
know that.
one. He had none of the. So the reactions on the screen were literally the terror of them not knowing what's happening, which is so brilliant. That's really
Yeah.
Scott.
It's a cool moment. So anyway, but yeah, Aaliyah, you do a lot of recording, so speak on that a little bit, please.
Yeah, well, to briefly touch on Julie's question, which I have a lot of the same things that you've both already mentioned. I do this thing, especially I play a lot of, like, I commission a lot of music, so I am bringing to life often music that does not yet exist. So I don't always have the most I might have is like a MIDI demo, which really is not like musical in any way. Like, I'm like, okay, maybe this rhythm is weird, or I need to understand this harmonic thing. Like, it gives me a bit of a a basis to go off of. But I am like, you'll like my answer, Bernard. It's a two-parter. One is that I always sing everything, and I like to make sure that I know it well enough that I can sing it before I ever touch the horn, because it just makes it way easier when I'm putting it on the horn. If I'm having problems, it just makes it a lot quicker for me to diagnose like what's happening. Like, am I not approaching this large interval in the right way, or I'm getting this rhythm wrong, or I can't like execute it or something like that. But really understanding, and I always have to sit in the back of the concerts at camp, because I'm very much react with my body, because I like to feel the rhythms and kind of feel how everything falls into, and so I'm like always moving. And so I like to sit in the back so I don't like distract other people. But I think something that I also have to learn music really quickly a lot, because I do a lot of different types of gigs. And so just maintaining my fundamentals almost all the time. It's never about like what I can't play in that particular piece. It's like this level of my technique needs. So I'm having trouble in this like fast tonguing passage. It's not that I can't play that passage, it's that my tonguing needs to be like better. You know what I mean? So like focusing on the fundamentals and then being able to diagnose the specific like technical problem that's going to enable me to not only like play this piece that I'm having trouble with, but any other piece that comes up that has something like that in it, is something that I do a lot. So especially when I and because
which is a core value of the camp.
Yeah.
I love this answer so much. I'm like thinking like you're my favorite person.
Always be plugging.
Sorry, Nikki,
Always be
you were my
plugging,
favorite
Bruno.
person. Now Alita's my favorite.
But often too, like when like right now I'm doing a lot of writing, a lot of arranging, so I don't have as much time to practice, but I make sure that I always do fundamentals, because then if I do get called to do something and I maybe only have like a week to prepare, sometimes less than that, I know that I have the things in check that I'm like likely going to need to be able to do. And then on the recording thing, you guys like brought up a lot of really interesting things. There's this tool called Melodyne, which is essentially like an auto tune. It's like a tuning tool, and you can also stretch time and kind of fix rhythms and things like that. But there's a version of it that can literally record like chords, and then you can like tune the chord. So like if the third is a little flat, you have the whole chord and you can just like, without doing the individual note, like you can take the entire orchestra and be like, that note's a little out of tune, and just fix that one. But I agree, Bernard. I think that something that was really eye-opening to me in grad school, where we did so much, we did a lot on the live production side and also in the studio. So I feel like it was really, I got to firsthand really understand the difference between like what it is to do a live show and what it is to like record something. And they're very different, but I don't know, like I really enjoy both. And studio is a lot more creative in a way that you don't, like with most live shows, like you get that one take and that's it. But with studio, you can, a lot of times when I do stuff, I'll have the band play it, and then I remember one time I was recording something from the last album, and on one take I was like, you have the chords, like you generally know how the song goes, but just ignore all of the things that I told you to do and play it. Like if this was your solo, like how would you play it? And I ended up using some of those takes, because you're giving, the performers freedom to kind of go off the page a little bit. And of course that gets into, different styles and things like that. But there's a lot of freedoms where, like, if we were in a concert and I was like, okay, we're going to play it again, but this time they're going to, like, you can't do that with like a Bruckner symphony. Like everyone's going to leave and go home.
Let's stop and do it again.
Right. But I think it's cool to really understand kind of the differences and like how it works, just so that you understand. I think I also, for example, one of my favorite things, whenever people are like, yeah, but like you sound so great, and I'm like, I should send you the session with all of the like tracks that I muted or like cut out, that I like missed notes and probably screamed an expletive after. But also like Miles Davis, like all of Miles Davis's record, like he cracked notes all the time. And I'm like, no one would dare to say that like Miles Davis was not like one of the greatest trumpet players of all time. So I think that like the missing notes thing is like, I don't know, we all do it. I literally went to see Turandot at the Met Opera, and literally like the big horn like moment in Nessun Dorma, like one of them cracked it. I was like, these are the Met Opera horns. Like I'll be okay. Like that's like the moment they needed to hit the right note, and they didn't. And like the world didn't end, so it's okay.
Shots
But yeah,
fired at the Met Opera horn section today.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh my God.
it's
No,
okay. We
well,
won't share
one thing I was
that
going to
part.
say, you probably all know. Do you know the name Glenn Gould? This name for the Canadians
yeah.
surely know Glenn Gould. Now you're a Canadian, so you have to know.
Right.
Famous pianist from the past, probably has the most famous recording of the Goldberg Variations, which is the famous Bach piece for very long piece for piano. He did it twice actually. He was known for being particularly neurotic. He was a brilliant performer. He took himself out of the performing scene in the late 60s to only record. And Columbia Studios basically hired him, and he would sit for weeks, like just recording, because he realized, like we're talking about, the recording process itself is an art form that is tangential but different from the live performance. And he liked it. Like, so I think some people, I enjoy the recording process as well. Some people don't like it as much because they feel it's almost feels artificial at first. But if you look at it from the broader picture, it is, like Aaliyah is saying, it allows you a lot of, I mean, there's almost no more creative thing you can have. It's just an open palette. When you're on the stage, you were definitely confined to that time and space, which has its own sort of aesthetic and everything to it. So I think we just need to look at that. But Glenn, I mean, he took himself out. He did all these many recordings. You can get them all on Apple Music and YouTube and stuff if you want to get into it. Some of the most famous piano recordings of all time. But he stopped performing. I mean, he literally just took himself out of the performing and spent all of his time in the studio. He actually didn't even believe that live performance would be necessary over time. He was like so extreme. But obviously, we know that it is. I think that I disagree. I think that live performance has a vital um, a vital role in our society that we want to continue having that. But it does mean that we need to give ourselves as performers grace and let ourselves be ourselves. I just saw the most amazing show, by the way. Do you know the name Brian Cavolius Mathern?
No.
He's a well, he lived in Hawaii actually. I don't know, Nikki, if you ever met him. He was in the Navy band. Now he does these horn and electronic shows. And I don't know if he's done a recording yet, but he did one of these shows for us yesterday. It was one of the coolest things I ever saw. He's on a tour now. Brian, if you're listening, hi. I'm so glad you visited us. But the cool thing about it was that it was just him. He was basically just saying, like, when I get on stage, I get nervous sometimes. And sometimes I miss notes. Sometimes I get shaky. And he was just yet he had this whole show that was sort of around just everything he was as a performer, his perceived strengths, his perceived weaknesses, all these things he struggled and embraced, but it was all wrapped up in the design of the show. And it was just really, really cool. It was like his story. And I thought that is so cool. And it was just a whole work of art. I think it's very easy in classical music, the way we're taught it sometimes, at least, and I think things are changing a lot, that it's all about perfection. It's all about winning. That is the message I think that gets across to young players. No, even unknowingly, I think it's so pervasive that it's actually become what I would call an ideology of the art form. Something that it's like a false consciousness. People just say, no, it's the only way it is. It's like, well, no, it's not. Leah, you were just referencing Miles Davis. I'll never forget the first time I watched a college search in my alma mater, which I love, Northwestern, and it was for trumpet. They had a very famous trumpet teacher there, and they had these 3 candidates that came in, one of whom was not a very good candidate for the school, but 2 of them were like very good teachers, very good performers. One of them ended up getting the job. But my friend, a composer, he asked this question to them. It was the first time I ever started. I was like 20 years old just watching this stuff. And he asked this question at the end of each, the question and answered him. He goes, well, how do you feel about Miles Davis? And how does that relate to your teaching of trumpet? And it was fascinating to see how bad the answers were. Or for one of them, they could not think of anything. They said, we just don't do that. And then one of them said, well, that's jazz. We don't do jazz. And the other one said, well, probably the best, but still not very good answer to my mind now was, well, I prepare our students through doing some pop concerts in different styles. We definitely have some of that, you know. It was all extremely like patronizing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, wait a minute, like Miles Davis, maybe next to Louis Armstrong, is the most famous trumpet player who's ever lived. Sold more albums than God, and it literally changed music. Like not only was a great performer, but actually literally evolved almost single-handedly along with this cohort of musicians, music, and contributed to American society and all these things. You can think of nothing that this relates to in terms of your teaching at this school. It was a really profound moment for me. But basically what they were saying is that we just don't do that here. I think that's got to change. So
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different threads, and it's been really fun to like pull at those with you guys today. And I know this was kind of an open-ended conversation, but
thanks, Julie, for the question. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Julie, for the question. But it was great to get to chat with you guys, and I mean, yeah, I'm learning a lot just talking to you and getting inspiration and everything. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things in music to explore and to talk about, and I am constantly inspired by you guys, and I love this conversation. And thanks to everybody for tuning in to the conversation.
Hope to see you this summer, and join us for the next Horn Camp Connects. Got 4 more of them.
Woohoo!
Okay, thank you for attending the first Horn Camp Connect of our 2024-2025 season. We're so happy you joined us to learn more about this year's exciting developments and connect with each other. If you'd like to rewatch today's session or share with others, you can find it on our YouTube page starting early next week. And thanks for coming, and we hope to see you next time. Have a good day, everyone.